how wonderful it is for all of us to be together. And we'll begin officially with the words of Sim Shalom, hoping to be able to grant peace, goodness, and blessing to everyone for this week to come. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Yai lai lies. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. We continue singing together with Let Us Sing a Song of Praise, Hava Nashira. Hava, Hava Nashira, Shir Hallelujah, Shir Hallelujah. 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 Hava. Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. I invite those of you who have candles to go ahead and light the candles with me, and then we'll sing the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We'll continue together singing Lecha Dodi, which if you have your prayer book, you can find on page 20 as we welcome in the Sabbath bride. Lecha Dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad yishmi'anu elam yuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'li tehila lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela likrat Shabbat lechu v'lecha ki mikor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'makshava techila lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela itoriri Kiva orech kumi ori uri shir daberi kevod Adonai alayich nigla lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela Bohi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha uv'tzola toch emunei am segula boi chala lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Yitkadal Shemir Rabba Be'alma divrach yotev yamlich malchutei B'chai echon uv'yom echon uv'chai edoko bet Yisrael Bagala uv'izman kariv V'himeru Amen. Yehi Shemir Rabba Mevarach Ve'halam Yitbarach v'yishtabach Yitpahar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yitchadar v'yitchaleh Vitala shemid kuresha berichu lehela mikol bechata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'himeru Amen. We'll ask those who are able to please rise for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam vaed.
And we continue, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, Uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdil bein yom uvein laila, Adonai tzavaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. And we continue, wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'ribareta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlektecha v'derech uv'shochvecha uv'kumecha ukshatam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. We continue in English. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again, we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, norat elot sefer, norat elot sefer, malechutecha ra'uvanecha, Hayam lifnei Moshe Miriam, Zeli anu ve'amru, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed, Ya'elai, 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 ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshi Shevi Shabbat, Kulam Yisbahu, V'yitangu mituvecha Shabbat, Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat, Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Uvashvi ratzita bo v'kirashto Shabbat. Chemdat yamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Zecher l'maaseh v'rishit Shabbat. Zecher l'maaseh v'rishit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Bless those who are able to please rise for the Amidah. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agit ilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanurah, El Hayon, Komel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chazevot V'Imaot, U'Mevi U'Givilav Livnei V'Neihem, L'Ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Hoseh U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Abraham V'Serat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, V'Chayei HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, V'Shivat Ruach U'Merit HaGashem, V'Chalkei L'Chaim B'Chesed, V'Chayei HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, Tomech Noflim V'Rafei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, B'Shenei Afar, B'Chamocha Ba'al Givurot, U'Mido Melach, Melech Memit U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'Ne'aman Et Al Chayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayei HaKol. Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yalelucha Selah. Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. You may be seated.
We will pray together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Ritzei, Ritzei, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, Be'amcha Yisrael, U'tefilatam, Be'ahava tekabel, U'tehil ratzon tamid, U'tehil ratzon tamid, Avodat Yisrael Amecha. Baruch Atah Adonai, She'otecha levadecha, V'yirah na'avod. She'otecha levadecha, V'yirah na'avod.
God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch Atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha, U'Lecha Na'eh Lehodot. And I was going to give us a translation of Shalom Rav. Not in this book. So we will say, great peace do we wish that you send upon Israel. Great and abundant peace. May we continue to pray for peace, not just for ourselves, but for others, as we take a moment in a second to take a moment for silent prayer. It's my hope that we will also concentrate and meditate on the meaning of peace in our lives today, especially. And if we turn the page, We can recite the blessing together. Oops, go back. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarech et amo Yisrael, bashalom. Please take a moment for silent reflection and meditation. The timing was perfect. Ethan just said I hadn't asked for water, but he wanted to make sure that I had water. So what a nice mitzvah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. It's without fail that it's right when I'm about to talk that they walk into the room. So, but it was actually for a very sweet reason. So I wanted to take just a moment to share with you my thoughts about this week's Torah portion, and hopefully not just to share with you, but to have you share as well with yourselves, with me, or just something to reflect on, perhaps over dinner. So in this week's Torah portion, it is called Chaye Sarah, which is literally the life of Sarah, but it's actually the very beginning of her death, the story of her death, because it says that these were the days of her life, and it continues to number the days that she lived. And in the part that I want to look at, after Sarah dies and Abraham mourns for her, he finds that he really would like a place for her to be buried, that is one that he could go back to, that's in this land of his ancestors. And so he chooses this place, the cave of Machpelah, and he goes to those who are living there, and he asks them if he can purchase this land. And so he says, to the Hittites living in Hebron, he says, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem, tnuli achuzat kever imachem, which means a stranger and a citizen am I with you. Sell me a burial site among you. Now, it may seem like a pretty normal, straightforward text, but as we know, the rabbis seem to find many peculiarities that we don't necessarily catch in the English. And this is one of those, because in the Hebrew it says ger v'toshav, and you may be familiar with what those are. They both are words used in the Torah that indicate a residence in a particular location. The word ger literally means stranger, and it's derived from the verb lagur, which is to dwell. And it has a connotation of an impermanent residence. And then we have the word toshav, which I referred to, I think, as citizen. And it comes from the word lashevet, the verb lashevet, which means to live. And it speaks of a permanent residence. So this is where I dwell, I live here. Abraham's self-description is therefore a little bit self-contradictory, because the question becomes, is he the citizen or is he more of a stranger? And Of course, our ancestors have a lot to share about that. Rashi says, here's a possibility. He says, Abraham is really saying, I am a stranger from a different land who has come to live with you. So if it is your will, I will be a stranger. Or if it is your will, I will be a settler. So he's sort of leaving the community to define that relationship for him, and to decide, what they're comfortable with is how he will be defined by them. And so we then have a different perspective by Ibn Ezra, who says the word ger, obviously when it stands by itself, again, means stranger, and toshav by itself means this resident. Therefore, when they're coupled together, it's supposed to mean that Abraham is trying to say, I am a sojourner, a resident alien among you. And he continues by saying, there are times when we know the experience of what it means to be a part of a community, and there are times when we know what it's like to be apart from the community. And in this case, it says specifically that ultimately who gets to determine the boundaries of that relationship? It would be Abraham. So in the first way that it's defined, Abraham is giving that control over to them. And then the second way of defining it, it's really him determining that role. And of course, there are those who would say that they can't really be separated, that there's this dual nature that really is trying to find a balance between being a stranger and a citizen at the same time. So the question becomes, is it maintaining our separateness that has allowed us to continue and maintain our traditions throughout the years? Or is it perhaps our ability to be successful and to integrate and to really be a part of our communities that we live in that has led to our longevity as a people and our success? I think there's a rabbi, Shmuel Golden, who points out that the next part to this, the next line, is that Abraham's neighbors respond by saying, Nasi Elohim ata betochenu. You are a prince of the Lord among us. B'mivchar kvarenu kvor et metecha. In the choicest of our graves, bury your dead. He says that this message is to convey the idea of them saying to Abraham, what's the deal? You don't need to struggle. You don't need to worry about these parameters. You don't need to stay separate. You're fully accepted among us. Now, I found it very interesting when I was looking through this that Golden found that to be problematic, but it wasn't a surprise to see that his commentary was written on an OU website for the Orthodox Union, in that he points out, he says, over and over again, the Hittites attempt to persuade Abraham to lower his guard, to join their community without conditions. Where'd it go? Over and over again, Abraham refuses, insisting upon boundaries and separation, insisting that the grave for Sarah be fully purchased and not received as a gift. Even after death, a Jew must remain distinct, his unique identity fully preserved. I thought that was an interesting comment. And honestly, I'm not sure that there's a great way for us to answer that as a community without further discussion, to decide or to debate and encourage conversation about how we can both be a part and apart from a community. And if being assimilated means that we have to be at odds with keeping our own traditions. I think, though, that this portion, the section, made me think, first of all, about the Holocaust that we memorialized Kristallnacht earlier this week, which was a time period when I think Jews did have to take into consideration if they were fully being accepted in their communities, because in many ways it was being defined for them by the communities in which they were being persecuted. But I was thinking of it also on an interpersonal level, because I think that for so many of us, it's easy to have too much separation or too much closeness in our relationships. And just like Abraham, in setting a type of balance or preparing us with these two words to remind us that we have our own identity, even when we are part of a larger group, that's an important recognition. Professionally, I can say that as organizations I belong to, sometimes I'm a part of them entirely, but they'll speak for something that I don't agree with. So I need to maintain my own individual ideas and not follow the entire community. And other times I need the support of a community, right? That we can accomplish things together that we can't accomplish alone. The same in our relationships with one another, that when we are in loving relationships, we don't lose ourselves in those moments, but rather we nurture our own selves and the relationship that we're a part of. I think there are many levels at which this idea of being both separate and together is really relevant. And so whether you choose to look at this as a question of, full immersion and acknowledgement within the countries that we live in as Jews, which I think is an important conversation, or if it's simply how does it work in your own life with how you set boundaries and set yourself up both in relationship to other people and other groups in your relationships, I think that there's a lot for us to really reflect on. And the length of our days hopefully will be like the length of Sarah's days. And hopefully we will be remembered and cared for and loved with as much, what's the word I'm looking for, with as much intentionality as Abraham gave, because he certainly put a lot of effort, a lot of thought into making sure that she had a burial place and that he had a place to go to. And so we think of our loved ones and we think of ourselves and our relationships that we have with each other. And we wish for shalom this week. And at this time, I'd like for us to take a moment to think of those in our community who are in need of healing. In particular, we call to mind Judy Hecht, Charla Davison Gates, Tyler Zeisloft, Pat Bloom, Ronald Epstein, James Hockman, Judith Perlman, Robin Kent, Lorna Kundert, Jerry Butler, Stephanie Noble, Gail Russack, Melinda Glovka, Mike Ammons, Helen Fine, Jeremy Wise, Paul Levine, Ed Buellin, Harvey Olson, Christine Wagner, Tracy Huddleston, Joe McKenna, Ellen Goodrich, Mark Romanowski, Jerry McDonald, Richard Lieberman, Joel Pinsker, Marty Sacker, Laura Holtzinger-Levin, Avraham Ben Avraham Visara, Dave Bussey, Jay Bainbridge, Chelsea Smith, Shava Eta, Rory Freisler, and Deborah Seidel. And of course, we call to mind all who we name now in our hearts, who are in need of healing. Baruch atah Adonai Rofei HaCholim. Blessed are you, O God, who brings healing to those who are in need of healing. And we together recite the words of Mishaberach, which may be found on the screen.
Yishberach Avoteinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Yishberach Imoteinu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with the vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May the warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way. Yishaberach avotenu. Yishaberach imotenu. Hear our prayer. Hear our prayer. Hear our prayer. Hear our prayer. And bless us as well. Ask those who are able to please rise for the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gdula leotzer bereshit, shelo asanu k'vyohei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam kelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei malach, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'nei Amar v'haya Adonai, L'malech al kol haaretz, V'yom hahu, Yeh Adonai echad, U'shemo, echad. You may be seated.
At this time, our thoughts turn to those whom death has taken from us recently. We are in a period of Shloshim for Helen M. Bennett, Margaret Robertson, and Edith Flyer. We also remember those who have died this season in years past. We are observing yahrzeits for Malcolm J. Altschul, Raymond S. Bennett, Jacob J. Blumenfeld, Worley Collins, Myrtle Duberstein, Selma Farnbacher, David Goldswig, Jessica Gordon, Max Isaacson, Arnold H. Israel, Sophia R. Jacobs, Clara Daneman Jacobs, Leonard Katz, Philip Cohn, Louis Leeds, Mamie B. Lehman, Howard H. Levine, Sarah Seidel Levine, Milton Marks, Victor Office, Rebecca Oak, George T. Rich, Samuel Richmond, Abraham B. Ross, Alan Ross, Richard S. Rutman, Leo Sajevitz, Ruth Dolly Saldoff, Jesse Samuelson, Gary Shapiro, Rose Gilbert Sinicki, Henry R. Silverman, Millie Simon Kotler, Ruth Veazey, and Mary Zimmerman. And I invite you to call to mind all those who you are remembering and perhaps pronouncing names differently if necessary. I invite you to call them to mind, and I ask those who are remembering or who are in mourning to please rise first. And the rest of us rise together as a community to recite the words of Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudsha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma, v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huya asei shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories always and only be for a blessing in our lives.
I'll ask everyone who has one to raise their glass, their fruit of the vines, and join me in Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava ufratzoni hinchilanu zikaron l'ma'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'chata ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat l'chaim.
Okay. And the challah has risen. We are very excited, and Ethan helped us to braid it, and Jonah was the first one to come in to eat it. So it's a family affair. As we say together, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Te'avon.
Te'avon.